Hello, everyone. Eric from Helps Law Firm for Seniors and Disabled Persons here today with you on January 8th, 2026. Okay. My name's Eric, attorney now for 26 years, 46 years. Wish it was 26, but 46. And what Helps is a national law firm. What we do is we represent seniors and disabled persons who owe debt in order to stop debt collectors from harassing them. And we educate them how they can maintain their financial independence. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat feature. We'll address them there. And then I got things to talk about that I've written down from before. We cover all kind of topics. We do this Monday through Thursday. And on Thursday, we start 2 hours later from where we normally start from Monday through Wednesday. Okay. So we'll ask, thanks for clarifying the military retirement pension protection. Called the other day and Kenneth told me it wasn't protected. So I was stressing out. Well, I just saw that and I just called one of the other attorneys that helped. They said, "You let everyone know here it helps it. They should understand that pensions are protected. I don't care what kind of pension it is. And military pension is protected automatically if it's deposited into a bank account like Social Security is if someone were to sue you. No, we don't want people stressing out. Okay. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them. And yes, I am happy when people tell me that they can hear me. So person writes in, a lot of things we talk about here, just so you know, we talk about them over and over again, same things, which is fine because we get a lot of new people that call in or that are listening to us. And people that listen to this channel, they're patient with them. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put it in the chat feature. There's no dumb question. And don't worry if it's been answered. Because our first mission here at Helps is to protect seniors from collector harassment. And we do that under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, which provides if you're represented by an attorney, debt collectors can no longer call or send you demand letters anymore. So when people find out about Helps, they call us, go over their situation. If they decide to enroll, we click a button. Excuse me. You can get enrolled immediately. And that day, and next day, or next few days, you can text, fax, email, or mail us the creditors you owe money to. All we need is a name, address, and account number. We don't need the balance. So we're going to send them a cease and desist letter within 24 to 48 hours, usually within 24 hours. In the meantime, if they were to call you before they get that letter and stop contact, you could answer the phone. You don't have to, but if you did answer the phone, you tell them you're represented by Helps, give them our name and number. Then they call us, and you're in our system as being our client. We don't turn anyone away. The cost is minimal. Those that pay, the payment doesn't begin until 30 or 60 days. But our most important thing we want you to understand is that your income is safe and protected. And we explain how it's protected in your bank account, explain why you don't need to worry about a lawsuit about losing any assets. And if you have any questions on other areas, we try to address those. Okay. Um, so welcome. Person contacts us from uh, looks like Tennessee. His wife passed away, and when his wife passed away, he lost uh, her Social Security, and he only gets part of her retirement income. He says, I have a lot of credit card debt and I struggle to pay it. And he says, I'm currently with a debt relief program. Okay. So what's a debt relief program or debt management program? There's a lot of debt management or debt relief programs that advertise. Um, with with a few exceptions, many of them will never tell a senior. Most won't. Vast majority won't. They won't ask you if you're a senior, and if you are a senior, They're not going to ask you where you get your income. They're just going to try to arrange for you to pay the debt. So they're not going to tell you the things you're going to hear today from me, that the fact that your Social Security is protected, so is your pension. So he's with this debt retirement program. I just requested they reduce how much I pay into each month so I have money for my medical, my doctor, my medical needs. I would like assistance with creditor calls and text messages and have someone I can refer to them when they ask for a phone number. Can you help me? Yeah, well, of course. Yeah, you bet. That's what we do. First thing we're going to tell you, you don't need to remain with that freedom debt relief, that debt management program. If you're signed up with the debt management program and you're listening to me right now, the question I have for you is when you enrolled with them, did they tell you that your income was protected? And if they didn't tell you that, they were withholding the most important piece of information that you needed to know. If you would have realized that, you would have realized you didn't need their help and you didn't need to pay the debt because no one could do anything to you. I mean, you could at least you'd be able to make an educated decision on what you do with your life and how you handle your money. Well, why don't they tell you that? If they'd have told you that, you would not have enrolled with them. So they purposely don't go into asking a person where he gets his money from. They don't ask that. I think that is to salve their conscience. Because if they were to ask you that, then they would know, oh, okay, this guy's on Social Security. No one can do anything to him. So if they tried to enroll you, then they might feel guilty. But then if they take the purpose of their program is we're just going to help people pay their debt. We don't care about their rights. And that's what they do. They don't care about what your rights are, but you're going to hear about what your rights are on this program. Okay. Um, Person wanted to know. Sometimes we get this question asked. They want to know who's going to sue me, the original creditor or a debt collector. Okay. Um, it depends, and you may never get sued at all. Okay. I would say I'm safe in saying that that a minority of your creditors would ever go to the debt to sue you, but there might be an exception. I used to give a percentage. I don't like to do that because I give a percentage and it's not on. People sometimes get upset, um, but it really doesn't matter. I would say primarily it would be uh, the debt collector files a lawsuit. The original creditor usually turns it over to a collection agency, but sometimes the original creditor will have their own attorney and they may be the ones named in it, but most of the time it's the debt collector. But it doesn't matter. Okay. Why? Well, if they sue you, they get a judgment, you're judgment proof. Why? Your Social Security is protected. Ever since Social Security was founded in 1935, it's been protected from debt collectors. Your pension is protected. Disability is protected. VA benefits. Virtually all forms of retirement are protected. Okay. So you don't need to worry. The other thing too, just so if you're enrolled with helps or you're thinking about helps, I want you to understand this. Our assistance is not one time. It's literally ongoing. When you enroll in helps, you're a client literally forever. Uh, you're not going to be paying forever. Normally the fee is, most a person would pay would be $40 for 24 months, $20 for 24 months free thereafter, possibly $30 for 24 months, 15 for 24 months free thereafter, or $20 for 24 months, $10 for 24 months free thereafter. And some people get our help for free. We don't turn anyone away. It's based on your household income. Remember, when you enroll in helps, you're going to stop paying all these creditors you don't pay. And we're going to tell you about your other rights. So, um, no, you don't need to worry about this debt. So this guy, sometimes people say, well, okay, they talk to us and maybe they have a credit card with the bank where they bank. Okay. And this person wants to know, do I need to close my checking account if I'm not going to pay that credit card with my bank? I get Social Security and a small pension are deposited in that checking account. Also has my son's name on it. Okay, here's the answer I gave. This was on someone was an inquiry on somewhere on one of our YouTube question or something like that. If it's a credit union, definitely yes, you'd want to close it and have your money go into a different account. Why is that? Well, if you've been listening to me, you know the answer. I'm going to tell you. It's when you signed up with the credit union, when you made the bank account with the credit union, in the small print, you gave them permission to take money from your account to pay any debt that you owed the credit union. And if you made a loan with the credit union, and part of the loan agreement says, hey, if you have a bank account with us, we're authorized to go into that bank account and take money out of that bank account to pay us. Now, regular banks don't do that, except for Truist Bank, but other banks don't. So credit unions do. There's a federal law or federal rule that says a bank, a regular bank, cannot offset money from your account, from your bank account for money you owe the bank, if the only money going in there is Social Security. Now, technically, if you had other money going in there, they could offset it, but we don't see banks doing it at all. Okay, so you should be able to keep the account with the bank and not pay the credit card, and you're going to be okay. Um, how will a judgment lien affect my primary residence closing when we go to a reverse mortgage closing? Depends on the state where you live. You might be able to get the judgment lien removed, okay? Um, but it could cause a problem, and it might need to, if you got the reverse mortgage, it might be necessary that any proceeds from the reverse mortgage would go to pay that judgment lien, okay? So you can call and talk to one of the attorneys that helps, and we'll tell you what the law is and go explain that to you. But the reverse mortgage company is not going to give you a loan unless that lien is cleared, either through state law or otherwise. Now, if it's a small amount, it may not make a big difference. If it's a big amount, it could be important. Now, in some places like Florida, Texas, you can have that lien removed, so you can make the mortgage payment without having to pay off the lien. But it can gum up the works, is the bottom line. Yeah, it might be a problem in Arkansas. I don't know how much you owe on the judgment, whether it's going to be a significant amount or not. One thing about reverse mortgages, um, usually, if a person's able to file bankruptcy, depending on the state where they live, if they don't have enough, but you might have a problem as I'm explaining this. All of a sudden I'm realizing the problem. You might not be able to file bankruptcy because if you're going to get a reverse mortgage, that means that you have equity in your home. Uh, you have a lot of equity in your home, at least over 50%. And depending on the state where you live, it might have a small amount that's protected um, and in bankruptcy. Wherefore, if you filed a bankruptcy, um, you know, it could be a problem. The trustee could take the home and sell it, and then, or they'd say, a trustee would say, well, or a attorney would say, you have to go into a Chapter 13 and pay the debt back, which you couldn't afford to do. So, um, it, it it's you're going to have to talk with an attorney to go over that. You can talk with helps. We'll give you what the law is. Um, person calls us, and I think it's from, where's it from? Georgia. We we turn in our travel trailer in November, and they said they picked it up, or a week later. I heard from them a couple of weeks ago that would be auctioned. Looks like the middle of January. We're on Social Security only and can't afford it anymore. I'm 72. My wife is 70 years old. Well, okay. So when you let a car go back, or like an RV, okay, camper, in this case a camper trailer, the lender is going to put it on the auction normally. That's how they sell it. And then if you owe 50,000 on it and they end up selling it for 25,000, the difference is what, 25,000? That's called a deficiency. And then once they sell it, they're going to send you a letter saying, hey, you owe this difference, $25,000. Now, you don't need to pay it. If your income is on Social Security, pension, disability, VA benefits, if you're listening to me, you can turn that into helps like you would turn in your credit card. So you don't need to worry about letting an RV go back, or a trailer or something like that, including a car. If you had a car payment you simply couldn't afford, you can let it go back. Then you might say, well, Eric, I have to have a car. But let's say the car payment's $400 and your total income is $1,500. The time you pay rent and tip that car and car insurance, it doesn't leave you any more money. Well, if you have equity in the car, which means it's worth more than what you owe, enough more, theoretically you could sell the car and get the excess money and use that to buy something cheaper. I have helps has a what we have letters, or we have emails that we send to people on different topics. And we also have videos, and one of them is on affordable transportation. And I'll tell a lot of people that, if you got a car you can't afford and there's no equity in it, or you're upside down in it, you can always let it go back. And if they end up owing money, so what? They say, well, if you have to have a car, well, if you can save up a little bit of money, Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace, you can often be able to buy a car for several $1,000s, maybe even less. It's mechanically reliable. It's not like you're driving over all across the country. Um, and I know that from personal experience. So it is possible to get a car. And boy, if you had a $400 car payment, you don't have to pay the insurance anymore. You got $400 more in your pocket. And if you got a car, you paid a car for cash, and you only need to get liability insurance. You don't need to have collision or comprehensive. Your insurance bill is going to go way down. Okay. Mrs. H asks, when the county does work for you through a program paid by the government, and it was an emergency and didn't collect the paperwork for their records yet, can they put a lien on the property? Oh, it depends on the state, but they probably can. There's probably a proceeding for a county government if they had to do something for them to place a lien. I don't see them trying to take the property, but it could be a lien that would impact the title report, so that when you go to sell the property, you're going to need to pay it. Person calls us from Texas. Um, they're in their 70s, and you get Social Security and a state pension. His wife gets this Social Security and a state pension too. Um, because of medical expenses and other overall living expenses, he had to give a car back. And he says, you know, our Social Security and our pension is deposited directly into our bank account. And he understands that it's protected from garnishment and bank liens. Um, I also worked part time, and these wages are deposited into a different account. And he says, is it better if I deposit my wages in the same account in which my Social Security and pension goes to protect that account and funds? Uh, yeah, but you don't need to worry about it unless you were sued. Okay. First off, let's be clear. In Texas, they can't garnish your wages. Okay. And twice the amount of your federal benefits deposited into your checking account is automatically protected from garnishment, regardless of what funds are in there, where they came from. So if this guy is getting 2,000 in Social Security, maybe 1,000 in pension, 2,000 times two is 4,000. That amount is protected in the bank account into which the Social Security goes, even if money came there from wages or his pension. Now you might say, well, Eric, I thought you said that no one can take my pension. Well, they can't. But if you had your pension deposited into a separate account and it wasn't a federal pension, and it wasn't deposited in an account in which Social Security goes, then if they garnish that account or that bank where that pension went deposited to, they could hold up that money and you'd have to file a challenge to garnishment or claim of exemption with the court to get it released. But you don't need to do that if you have that money deposited into the same account to which your bank account, into which your Social Security is deposited. And you keep the balance less than twice the amount of your Social Security, or twice the amount of your Social Security, twice the amount of your Social Security in your military retirement. If you work for the post office, that's a federal retirement, or the railroad. Okay. Person contacts us from Idaho. They're getting collection notices from a collection agency because they said they explained that their insurance would have paid for it, but the doctor fouled up and didn't turn it in time, and they tacked additional charges. Now, well, you don't need to worry about it. His income is, if your income, Social Security, or pension, you don't need to pay it. Person contacts us from Illinois. Says, I'm 65 years old and I just started collecting Social Security. Excuse me. With the lower income, he says, I can't afford to pay the debt anymore. Should I pay them what I can afford? You don't need to. I mean, it's up to you. You certainly don't need to. If your only income is Social Security and it's a minimal amount, you probably don't have any extra money with which to pay them. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Okay, this is a good example of what people have to deal with. Um, that's why I'm glad you're listening to me so we can talk about this so you don't read it. Okay, this he says, I'm a senior and I'm working part time. And he says, I tried paying off the debt, uh, but I was no longer able to pay it. Um, he took it out a personal loan back in 2018 and had to stop paying it back in 2022. Um, he had some family members that were helping him, but they passed away. And apparently he was buying a home and he needs to get it repaired so they can get back in it. Um, we're trying to get all the damage repaired so that we can live back in the house without getting sick. I explained all of this to my collectors, and he says they refuse to allow him to pay what he could afford to pay each month because it doesn't agree with what the original creditor wanted. So they just automatically start to threaten him with litigation and lawsuit. And so what? Don't need. I mean, he doesn't need to pay it if he doesn't have it. Uh, his income's protected. We'll go over the equity in his home and how it'll be protected. Why he doesn't need to worry about that. So if you do have any questions, as you hear me talk about your situation, don't hesitate to call us. Okay? 855-435-7787. Douglas Jensen. No, I'll explain. He says, I default on a bank credit card. Okay. Uh, let's say it's 5,000. Whatever. The bank sends a 1099-C to the IRS. Okay, what's a 1099-C? That's a form a creditor is technically required to send to the IRS if you owe over $600. That says the IRS, hey, we tried to get this guy to pay us. He never paid us. Therefore, this should be counted as income to it. And when you file the tax returns, you're supposed to deal with that. Okay, but let me go on what he says. The IRS adds that amount to my Social Security benefit as income. IRS can levy 15% of my Social Security benefit. No, not going to happen. I'll tell you what. First off, if your only income is Social Security, you're not even required to file a tax return. Okay. Now, technically, uh, let's say the debt was, you can earn Social Security plus an extra like $15,000 or more if you're married. Let's say the debt was for $30,000 and they sent a 1099-C. Well, then technically you might have, that much income and you could technically be required to file a tax return. I don't see the IRS getting too uproar over people that are just getting Social Security, trying to force them to file a tax return because of a 1099-C. Now, if they were, a couple things you can do. One thing is you could file a tax return, and there's a form you can file, 982. And if you're insolvent, which means if your debt exceeds your assets, there's no tax. But let's say you did owe a tax, and you did, for whatever reason, file a return. If your income is only Social Security, it's going to be easy for you to qualify for what's called currently not collectible status with IRS. And your income is going to be low enough you're not going to have to pay that tax. But probably don't even need to file the tax return. And if you did, and the IRS said, okay, you owe these taxes, then what is IRS going to do? Probably do nothing. But if they did anything, the most they would do is send you a notice saying they intend to offset 15% of your Social Security after 90 days. Okay, after 60 days, and that'll give you plenty of time to contact the IRS and get on currently not collectible status. So, Douglas, you're kind of like trying to find something to worry about. Shouldn't be a problem. You can always think of what 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 possible bad thing could happen. I'm 76, 74, turning 46 years, about 30 to 40,000 bankruptcies. Started helps back in 2012. Okay, this kind of problem you're describing just doesn't happen. IRS does not, 1099-Cs are not a problem for our seniors. Now, if you were a very wealthy senior, it could be something different, but not our clients. One of the purposes it helps is so that if you do have one of these questions, you can always call and talk to us. And I understand that some people worry more than others. So I don't want to make fun of anyone, or I don't want anyone to feel bad because I might say that it's not an issue. I understand being concerned. Okay. I want to be real clear on that. Because of that, you can always call and talk to us. And sometimes I'll tell people, well, worrying about that is like worrying about what to feed the Martians on dinner on Saturday night. I mean, theoretically, I mean, it's a big universe. The aliens could come here. You realize that, don't you? It's possible. We don't know everything. I don't live my life worrying about that. It's also possible you can go to Circle K or Dollar General on Friday night at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, whatever, and get hit by a drunk driver. But we don't live our lives that way, worrying about that kind of stuff. So, but if that were to happen, we would know what to do. And so that's the same thing here. If there was a problem with the taxes, we know what to do. So don't worry about it. Okay. But I'm not discounting a person's concern ever. That is specifically why Helps was founded, so that we could help seniors who had worries, that, so they could stop worrying about things. And then there's the law, and I could easily say, sometimes I talk to people and they talk to attorneys who tell them, well, this or that bad thing could happen to you. Okay. But I say to myself, well, that's like the attorney advising someone about you could get hit by a drunk driver or the Martians could come. You know, uh, we don't we don't live our life. When you talk to someone, you got to be able to tell them about what the realistic possibility of something happening. Sometimes it's so minimal that to talk about it like it's going to happen is really, it's not right. Okay. So, but I understand people still worry, and that's why you can always call and talk to us, no matter how many times. So this guy gets Social Security, and apparently he gets some adoption assistance. So is adoption assistance protected from collectors? That would be under state law, and I can't imagine any state where it wouldn't be protected by a state law. He's got a debt exceeding $20,000. He wants to keep his car payment. He wants to let go of the credit cards except for one of the credit cards. Can a creditor take my, he wants to keep current with his car payment. Can a creditor take my bank account? Well, as long as you keep it less than twice the amount of what you get in Social Security, no. If you get more than that, then they could they could put a hold on the excess, and you'd have to file some paperwork to get the excess released. And he wants to know, are they going to take my car? Well, okay. Virtually every state has exemption laws. Like those are laws that said a lot of times they're important in bankruptcy. That what they mean is, you know, you're allowed to keep so much equity in a home, or so much equity in a car, or so much equity in household goods, or tools of trade. And there's a list of assets that you're protected and how much equity. Uh, it's our experience that helps that it's not the practice of consumer judgment creditors to go after a person's non-exempt equity in an asset, even if they have equity in it over and above the exemption for the state where they live. There are a few exceptions, but they're pretty rare. Okay. But you can always call and talk to us about your situation. Person says he's 80 years old and he's on a pension. I recently saw our video from Helps and he wants more information. And he's on a debt management program. He says, because I believe I should pay my debts. My problem came up when my spouse passed away 6 months ago, and I lost her retirement income. Well, okay, uh, you know, you can still pay your debt if you want. Helps is designed for seniors that can't afford to pay their debt for whatever reason. Okay. Well, um, we don't want people to feel guilty if you can't pay your debt. When you incur the debt, uh, you agreed to pay the debt, but they also charged you interest. Now, one of the reasons they charged you interest is because they knew that a certain percentage of persons that to whom they extended credit were not going to be able to pay the debt, and therefore they needed to charge interest to compensate themselves for those persons that weren't able to pay the debt. Okay, um, so you're not being dishonest if you can't pay the debt. They knew ahead of time that that was a possibility, and then legislators and congressmen pass laws to protect your income because they don't want seniors going without basic needs. Uh, And I tell my firm belief is that a senior that is unable to pay their debt, it's not they would pay it if they could, they simply can't. It's either I need money for my electricity, for my food, for little basic things that that I need, and it's not they would pay it if they could, but they can't. Cindy says it's really hard not to worry about all these potential liens. I have several health issues and struggling. I don't know what liens you're talking. Only lien that would be there, Cindy, is if you were buying a home and someone sued you and got a judgment. Then that could be a judgment lien on the home. But that doesn't mean that they're going to foreclose on the home. They're not. Okay. So, and then there's different ways to get the liens removed. Let's say, for example, you're a senior. Let's say you're a widow and the home is in your name and you're worried about if I don't pay these debt, creditors are going to get liens. And I'd like my home to go to my kids when I die. Well, you could consider adding your children's name to the home with you before anyone sued you and got a judgment as joint owners with rights to survivorship. That means that you own the home with the children. And then when you pass on, home would automatically go to the kids. And if any creditor later had sued you after the kid's name were added to the home and it got a judgment lien, when you die, the property automatically goes to the joint owners, the kids, and that judgment lien disappears. Or if you own the home with the spouse and the judgment's just in the spouse's name, then the lien can go away. There's a lot of answers to these questions. You shouldn't worry. Okay. Okay. If I give up my debts, in other words, if I stop paying my debt, this person's asking, and then I die, we're all going to die. Will my credit will my credit debts go to my kids, my adult kids who are also on Social Security disability? Absolutely not. Your children will never be responsible for your debt. Okay, don't need to worry about that. The only way they would need to pay the debt is if you died and you had a will, for example. And this doesn't happen for very few of our clients. Then, if there was a probate, which means you had assets that needed to be sold, then before your kids get money, the creditor gets paid. The way it normally works in most states is that if you die and you got assets, the proceeds from your estate first go to pay the cost of your burial, and then if there's any extra money, divided amongst your creditors, and then if there's anything left over, it goes to your heirs. Yeah. If you own if you had your property like a car with you and your kid's name on it, the house with you and your kid's name on it, then you own it jointly with survivorship rights. That means when you pass away, it automatically goes to them. If you had your kid's name on your bank account, then when you pass away, bank account automatically goes to the kids. But a lot of times for a lot of seniors, the vast majority, there's no probate. Well, you might say, well, Eric, what about my furniture? Furniture isn't worth probating. Furniture doesn't have any value. So you can always call and talk to us. So we're happy to talk to family members too about these things. Okay. Guy says he's drowning in credit card debt, medical debt, personal loans. He's 67 years old on Social Security disability. He signed up with a debt finance company. This one's called Beyond Finance. We hear a lot about them. I found out they're just taking my money. That's right. When he signed up with them, did they tell him that his income was protected? He didn't need to pay the debt? Absolutely not. These companies, vast majority of them are scammers when it comes to seniors by not telling them the truth. You know, one definition of fraud is if you withhold information from someone that's to their financial benefit so that it benefits you financially. So I consider a lot of these debt management companies are just fraudulent, even the nonprofit ones, because they withhold information that your income is protected so that you'll enroll with them and they'll get paid. He's very sick, and I'm supposed to show up for court for a bill. It's like this coming March. I don't have that kind of money. Can you help me? Yes, we can help you. If you're having the problems we're talking about today, please call us and talk to us. You'll be glad you did. We can answer your questions. A lot of people call us 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before they decide to enroll in house. And sometimes it takes over a period of time. We don't want you to worry. Person calls us from Maryland. Can a collection agency that has a debt from a credit card uh, take my tax refund from my bank account? Well, they're not going to be able to take your tax refund. IRS, they can't garnish your IRS taxes. Okay. Then the question is, well, what about when it deposits in your bank account? Well, first they have to have they have to have a judgment against you. But as long as you keep the balance in your bank account uh, less than twice the amount of federal benefits you get, whatever you get within the last 60 days, which is normally twice the amount. Okay. So if you got 1,500, 3,000 is protected. Now, if you got $1,000 tax refund for whatever reason, it's less than 3,000 is protected. Now, and it's easy to adjust that. If it's going to go over that and someone has a judgment, just withdraw the money when it gets deposited right there. Uh, in almost every instance, a garnishment isn't an ongoing thing on a bank account. It's kind of a snapshot at time. So if the bank gets it at 10 o'clock in the morning, then they look at your account, and if it's less than twice the amount of your Social Security, uh, that's fine. Forget it. And then if the rest of the money comes in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it doesn't matter. They've already looked at it, taken care of it. Okay. Now, tax refunds could be taken for things like child support. Okay, here's another guy with a debt management company, National Debt Relief. It's a pretty easy business to get into if you want to take advantage of people. Debt management or debt relief companies. They front load, depends on the state laws, but they front load their fees. So if a person's in there for a year and all of a sudden they realize they're not helping me, they've already been paid. You see, 70, retired with Social Security and a small pension, got 50,000 in credit card debt that's being handled by National Debt Relief. From what I've seen from your videos, I could cancel the program, abandoning payments, and not have to worry about any repercussions. Yeah. Is this correct? Yes. Any reason why I should continue with National Debt Relief? No. I tell people sometimes, only the company is like, you know, it's like you don't need a hole in your head. You don't need to. You don't need National Debt Relief. When you enrolled with National Debt Relief or one of these companies, did they tell you that your income was protected? You've heard me say this already today. No, they didn't tell you that. So you don't need to, and you can cancel with them and ask them to return your money. I had a guy last week who said, any enrolled with helps, and they returned $5,000 because they were holding the money supposedly to settle. And I said, well, that's great. He was thrilled to death. He could have really used the money. He was thrilled to death. Told this story before, but it just comes to my mind. When I was doing bankruptcies, now this would have been in the early 90s maybe, I was in my office and I heard it was an old Victorian house and the lobby was outside my door. And uh, I heard someone screaming out in the lobby, and it wasn't a terrified scream. It was like a scream of joy. And immediately went out and what's going on? And she was holding up a scratch ticket from a lotto card, and she had won $25,000 if I remember right. It was a lot of money, and I congratulated her. They came back in the office. It was a couple, and we went over their situation. They ended up filing bankruptcy. They used the 25,000. They needed a lot of dental work and some other stuff before we filed bankruptcy. They took care of those problems. So they still filed bankruptcy, but remember that. And then creditors can do funny things too. I remember one time I was in my office and I was talking with a couple, and this guy walks into my office. Okay, and I'm meeting with people, and I don't know how he got through the receptionist, but he just walked in. And I looked at him and said, "Can I help you?" And he says, "I want the keys. I want the keys now." I said, "What do you want? What do you mean I want the keys? I need your keys for the car." Uh, and at first I thought, and then all of a sudden I realized he was really talking kind of snotty to me. Uh, that he was there once in a while when we filed bankruptcy, people would leave cars out in our parking lot and they'd give us the keys and we'd tell the car lender, yeah, the car's here, come pick it up from our office parking lot. And he thought he was repossessing my car. So someone had told him, come pick up this car at Olsen's office. It's being repossessed. He was trying to show off his authority. So what did I do? I stood up, I opened my door, and I said, get off my property. I don't want to see you. Get off. I kicked him out of the office and said, come back, you're trespassing. Okay. Well, you're going to get in trouble. I said, uh-uh. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. It made me feel good. But anyway, okay. We've got a few more minutes here, if you don't mind some stories. I received a small claim summons for credit one. I found you on the internet. Please help. Well, yeah, from Alabama. Yeah, when a person if you've been sued, you get us a copy of the lawsuit. We usually need the first 2 or 3 pages. If you're enrolled in help, we're going to send a letter to the attorney that sued you. We're going to let them know that your income is protected. You're not going to go to court. We're going to call you, explain why you don't need to go to court. I'm going to send you some emails that explain how and why your income's protected, why, and again, why your other assets are protected, so you don't need to worry. Um, Good morning. He says, I have past tax debt. I don't know if it's to the IRS or where it's from an annuity that I inherited in 2016, and I owe taxes on that income, but I sold the annuity. Now I receive under $1,500 a month in Social Security, and they want the money. IRS wants the money. Am I protected? Um, yeah, your income's really low. You can get on currently not collectible status. IRS probably will not do anything. We'll go over it with you. Explain that. See, our main mission is to protect seniors from collector harassment. But our second mission is to educate seniors how they can maintain their financial independence. And that's one reason we have these YouTube live videos so that we can go over this with you and talk about these other issues that come up. Person contacts us from Texas. Um, he's on Social Security and a state pension. During the medical expenses and overall living costs, he surrendered his car, and he's listened to us, and he understands how his pension and bank account is protected if he gets from garnishments on the bank account, on his bank account. And he says he works part-time, and the money is deposited in a different account. He wants to know if it would be better if I deposit in the account into which uh, my Social Security goes. And the answer to that is only only if you're sued, then yeah, it would be a good idea to do that. Okay. And then you don't need to worry about your income being garnished because you live in Texas and they can't garnish income there. Now, in every other state, there's a federal law that protects 217 and 50 cents net per week from garnishment. But a lot of states protect more than that. Some states prohibit garnishment. Texas is a good example. Trying to prepare myself, get ahead of all this if it happens. As we say in Texas, he said, it's time to circle the wagons. We don't mind talking to people about potentials. Sometimes if it gets too far down the line, we'll say, it's not worth worrying about. It's too unlikely to be concerned. What about a car that's been repossessed? Can you just not pay anything? Absolutely. Yeah. Remember, all your income's protected. I don't care what the debt is. The only exception is if you owed past due alimony or child support. they could come after your 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 uh, your Social Security. The IRS could come after 15% of. I've never seen the IRS garnish a pension. Now they might be able to do it for some really wealthy person. They don't go after pensions. And as far as Social Security, they would send you a letter saying they intend to offset 15% of your Social Security after. But you have 60 days to contact the IRS and get on currently not collectible status. So no, William, if you owe a car on a car that's repoed and they sell it and you owe money on it, you don't need to pay it. Is there a way to stop unwanted phone calls from a creditor? He, he gives a bank. I get at least a half a dozen calls, and he gives the phone number. Also, is the letter to prospective landlords in a generic phone letter specific to a single landlord? Okay, so um, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act applies to debt collectors, not original creditors. In 7 states, it applies to both. But it's our experience that when someone enrolls in helps, we're going to send a letter to whoever you owe money to, even if it's an original credit. And if it's an original creditor like a bank, they may still send you a bill, okay, or a statement, but they're going to stop calling you, okay? Although it's legal for them to call, they normally stop calling. And there's a lot of reasons why they do that, okay? Okay, we'll finish with this one. Person contacts us from Illinois. He helped someone get a car. First 5 or 6 months, they made the payment. And after that, he's been making 90% or thereabouts of the payments. Time he knew about the problem, there was a late fee involved, making the payment around over $600 a month. That makes the payment very hard. It says they're both on the title and the paperwork. Can I stop payment on the car? Absolutely. Yeah. If you're making a payment for someone on a car and they're not making the payment, you can't afford it. Stop making the payment. They can repossess it, whatever. They can come after you for the money. I've explained today how your income's protected. You don't need to worry. Okay. So we've come to the end of the hour. Please press the like button if you've liked this or subscribe to our channel. We always ask that people share what Helps does with others. And if you're having financial problems, if you owe credit card debt you can't afford to pay, if you have other issues, please don't hesitate to call Helps. Okay, we represent seniors all over the country. We don't turn anyone away that needs the help that we provide. So God bless, and I will talk to you Monday. Have a great day.